Shanna Busch. She's been named the West Virginia Council of Teachers of Mathematics Middle School Math Teacher of the Year out of Jefferson County. Good morning, Shanna. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. How long have you been teaching in Jefferson County?
In Jefferson County, about 6 years.
How long have you been teaching overall?
About 14.
About 14. Now, we have some things in common here, as I'm finding out in our little discussion before the show began.
In which John and I do not have.
Yeah. So a couple of cool things here. You are originally from Pittsburgh.
Yes.
You have some Italian in you.
Yes.
Yeah. And you also spent some time educating yourself at Duquesne University.
Wonderful school.
You guys can just leave anytime you want. Yeah.
We might as well, John.
That's a triple crown right there, Bill.
Yeah.
Right? You're gonna
Yeah, and I don't come close to any of them. I'm certainly not. I don't speak Italian. You recognize that?
You did take French lessons, though, which was one of your funnier stories.
Yeah. Not successfully, but.
Shanna, what's the Italian name?
My grandma's last name was Policari.
Policari. You know where she was from in Italy?
I don't, actually.
Yeah, okay, that's all right. We'll work on that one later. Yeah. Tell me about teaching math at what school?
I teach at Harpers Ferry Middle School in Jefferson County. And math is one of those subjects where you either sort of love it or you sort of hate it when you walk into my classroom. So my whole goal throughout the year is to make you love it just a little bit more than you did when you walked in my classroom.
Middle school math, algebra?
We do some algebra, yeah. We do have some solving of equations. We throw some letters in there, which throws a lot of students off. They're like, I thought math was just about numbers, and then they see letters, and they kind of start to get a little scared there.
Tell me about the group that has selected you as the Teacher of the Year.
So this is our Council of Teachers of Mathematics. So it's a group of educators from across the state that get together, and we try to find ways of reaching students better, teaching mathematics in a more authentic way, of helping students to learn and grow and make gains and progress. Tell me about the amount of freedom that you have to be creative in teaching math. I have a lot of freedom in teaching math. I have standards that I have to teach, and we do have a curriculum that we have that we've adopted this year, which is new, and my administration is great. So outside of that, I'm at liberty to, however I think that I can teach the standards best, to implement them. And what do you win by getting this award? Well, I win the awesome honor of having the award. My colleagues made up a banner, so I have a banner hanging in our foyer, sort of our upstairs, and I only found that out as students came down. They said, "Miss Busch, do you know that you're on a banner down there?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" So I went down and checked out, a little embarrassing, but yeah. That's cool. Yes. Now, did you have to personally apply for the award or be nominated for it, or what? I had to be nominated, and I was nominated by a colleague of mine, and I had absolutely no idea that I was even nominated. So I was attending the math conference, as I do every year, to try to better my craft, and with two other colleagues of mine, and we were attending the banquet that night, which we normally don't do. And I was like, okay, this is just a nice sort of added benefit. And I'm listening to all of the teachers ahead of me receive their Teacher of the Year, and I was like, looking through the pamphlet, I'm like, I wonder how you become Teacher of the Year. I literally had no idea. Up until the time that they said my name, I had no idea. So you were totally surprised by it? I was totally surprised. In addition to that, my whole family was there. My husband was there, our 4 children. I had no idea that they were there at all, which took a lot of secret holding from me, because we're a very connected family with technology, thanks to like apps that you can track your family and your children. So the fact that they got there without me knowing, was incredible. That's pretty cool. Yes. So they all knew. My children only knew that day when my husband pulled them out of school early so that they could drive down. He had known for a couple of months because he was in on it with another colleague of mine. But it was wonderful that they got to share in that moment with me.
Now, is that an excused absence?
I don't think so.
Good question.
I don't think so, yes.
Yeah, Shanna, as you're describing your work as teacher, you've use 3 or 4 words. One, trying to make math more authentic. You also tried to make it more exciting and to encourage the students. Are these all mutually supportive of each other, or do they kind of weave together with your philosophy of how to teach math?
Absolutely. So my goal first is to make students want to walk into my classroom. So I want to build connections with my students, build relationships with them. I'm one of the cross-country coaches. I'm one of the track coaches. I try to be involved with them and finding out what they're doing in their own personal lives and try to just support them as people. And my classroom environment is probably much different than how we all spent our time in a math classroom. I don't have traditional desks where we all sit apart in rows. I have a lot of flexible seating. We have LED lights. The overhead lights are never turned on. It's a very calm and peaceful environment. So they want to come into my classroom. That's step number one. Once I check that box, then I work on showing them that math isn't this boring subject that they don't have to despise. It's actually really fun and engaging. We can work with our peers to do fun, creative, collaborative things to learn math.
For example, how about elaborate on the latter?
So we don't do a lot of seat work. I get them up moving around the room at what's called vertical whiteboards. So they are they get a random group. So every day they sit in a different location in my classroom, and that's determined by a random card that I give. So they work with different people every day. They sit in a different seat every day. So it allows them to, sometimes they work with friends and sometimes they work with people that maybe they're not so friendly with, which is just a life skill. We have to be able to get along with other people and to work together. So they're up out of their seats. They're working on vertical whiteboards, which allows me to sit sort of and stand in the center of the room. So at one time I can see everyone's thinking. I can see what groups are sort of stuck. I can see what groups have already flown through the problem that I've given them so that I can give them an extension or a challenge to the problem, which is much different than if everybody was just working individually at their seats. I wouldn't be able to see everyone's work almost at the same time.
And what size class are we talking about?
My biggest class this year is around 18 or so students.
Okay, so
yeah,
manageable, yeah.
Yes, I've certainly had a higher class size than that in the past.
Now, how much do you introduce real-world experiences? We often hear a kid interested in baseball use baseball analogies. Do you do that very much?
Yeah, they ask me that question all the time. When am I going to use this in real life?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I really wanted to implement to them, a real life skill, is they all get paid in my classroom. So they get a weekly paycheck. They keep track of that in their checkbook every week. They have to pay a federal tax. They have to pay a classroom tax. They have to pay rent in my classroom, and they keep track of that all in their register. And then they have the opportunity to earn bonuses. So if they go above and beyond in their assignments or whatnot, then they can earn additional money, tax-free, which I tell them does not happen in the world. And then once a month, we have a classroom store. Thanks to generous donors, thanks to my district, I'm able to supply that throughout the year. And then they get to turn their pretend classroom money into real, tangible things that they actually can take home.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
so we're talking arithmetic as opposed to more advanced. I don't know what happens at 7th and 8th grade.
Sure. So
Well, what is there are terms of art here? This is middle school. What is middle school here?
Grades.
grades.
6 through 8.
6 through 8. Okay. So what is the most advanced level of math that they will be doing?
As far as for me, for 7th grade,
Right.
they do algebra, geometry, we do probability.
Okay, so you're still going to have to.
Oh, absolutely.
Sooner or later, you have to introduce, maybe not here, but the equivalent of a quadratic equation.
Sure, not
It
here,
has to
but-
be done.
Yes.
So getting to that theoretical element, there ain't no taxation on that, right? So you still have to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah, I still have standards that I have to teach, which, math is one of those subjects I tell them you have to put a lot of effort in, because what you learn this year is going to affect how you learn and what you learn next year, and how successful you are at it, because it builds upon each other. So what they're learning in 7th grade is absolutely going to affect what they're doing in high school. But I try to just tie that in so that they can, they get to use, as my classroom store, they get to use a coupon. So they get to calculate what's the percentage that I get to take off. They calculate sales tax. So they're doing a lot of percentage things, which is a lot of the standards that we kind of focus on too in 7th
Do you
grade.
teach 6th graders as well?
I do not, just 7th
Okay.
grade.
Do you find that a lot of the students who are coming in arrive self-defeated. I think math is one of those subjects that people will assume, kids in particular, even adults too, I can't do math. And I think it happens in reading too.
Yes.
How do you overcome that?
Well, I think it's just helping to build their confidence and letting them sort of enter in these very low entry tasks that I give them, where everyone has a chance to be successful. Because maybe in years prior, how their classroom was set up or just the experience they've had, they feel like they can't be successful in math. So allowing everyone to have that opportunity to have that initial success and then keep building upon that, keep building their confidence, where I keep pushing them a little bit further so that they keep reaching for, okay, I accomplished this goal. Wow, I didn't even think I could do that. Now let's set our sights on the next one.
Now, is that fairly common? Individuals realize they can do more than they thought they could?
I think so. I hope that the majority of my students feel like that. Obviously there's going to be, a small minority in any class that I have that, they come in feeling defeated, and unfortunately they stay feeling defeated no matter what the teacher in the classroom does.
I remember so vividly in geometry. I don't know what age that is when you take geometry, but I was doing pretty well until I was told that 3 points define a plane. And then they show me this thing of glass, and 3 points no, that's a triangle. And the translation of that into the third dimension, it just wasn't taking. And the teacher would get so frustrated, and I would get so frustrated, because it's like he had said everything he can say to explain this,
Right.
and I just wasn't getting it. And I think that's the brilliance of a good math teacher, is to somehow break through to see where the block is, and then break it.
And I'm also trying to break them of thinking about their grade as like the most important thing. They just want to complete something. Is this graded? What kind of grade am I going to get? And I'm trying to break that in. The learning is the most important part. The growth is the most important part. Where did you start when you entered my classroom? Where are you leaving when you exit my classroom? That's what I want to see.
Have you followed your students when they get into high school and subsequent to high school? How much, if their attitude toward math has changed?
I think that when they leave, I often see my former students in the wild, if you will, when I'm out and about, because I live in the community which I teach, which is really important to me. So I often see former students, and they always come up to me, Miss Busch, and for the most part, I remember their names. But, I've had a lot of students so far over the years. So, but they'll kindly remind me. And they always have fond memories, which is great, which is what I want them to look back on, and to know that I was there, I supported them, that they could come to me if they had questions about anything. It wasn't like, I've had teachers in the past where you didn't dare raise your hand and ask a question, at the risk of feeling, less than, or you didn't want, your peers to think, and I try to create a safe classroom where students feel comfortable doing that.
You used an example earlier that your teaching method was using a series of whiteboards, and you'd be kind of in the middle. Is this and I remember, I'm obviously from the day where everybody sat behind a desk and just trying to keep your head low so the teacher would not call upon you. Are a lot of the math teachers now using the more modern approach?
This is a trend that we're definitely going at. The whole framework is called Building Thinking Classrooms. And our district has been one of the ones at the forefront of trying to implement this in our math classrooms. And it can be in other subjects as well. It's not just exclusive to math. But it does get students to work together and to get them up moving around. And research shows that when they're standing, they're in a more active learning mode. And when they sit down, they go into that passive learning mode, where they could look like they're being very compliant. They're not disruptive. They're not doing anything. But are they actually thinking? Are they actually learning?
Yeah, with group, and I got the impression there'd be a group around a whiteboard. In groups, there's invariably one that kind of takes the lead, and there's always one or two or three, which I was one, that tried to hide behind the leader. Do you find that in your math discussions?
Well, our framework really shows that random groups of 3 is like sort of the perfect number. When you have only 2, then one person sort of takes over. When you have 4, then you can kind of hide. But we always say that with this Building Thinking Classrooms framework, that whoever is writing on the whiteboard is not the person doing the thinking. So even if I'm standing there and I'm looking at a problem and I'm going, I have no idea how to solve this, that's super easy, because if one of my peers knows, I'll be like, I'll be the one to write for this one. And when I walk around and I see students and I see, one person dominating, I said, okay, time to change the marker. So then that allows them to at least be writing down, be listening to what their peer is saying, to be writing it down. And all of that is contributing to their learning.
And there has to be times where that board is coming up with a different answer than that board.
Absolutely.
And that leads to consternation between the groups.
Absolutely. And they can send out a spy. So sometimes I say, okay, I said, it's time to send out your spy. I said, go check out the other boards.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do they have answers that match yours, or the answer is different? What do you think? Do you think they're right? Do you think you're right? What type of reasoning? So then they have to sort of justify and explain. The most common question I get is, are we right? And I say, you tell me, are you right? Explain to me what you did. Did you solve this in a logical order? Did you use the rules or whatever we're learning about? And then you can tell yourself, you can know whether or not you're right or not.
Are these various roles, the spy, the writer, and the like, are they identified by you, or is it something they do themselves?
The group themselves identifies, yeah. But they will definitely change because everybody likes to be the spy too. So, they won't always choose the same person to do that.
So do you get credit if you come up with the wrong answer in an honest way? Do you get credit for this?
Sure. So it lends for discussions, right, of common misconceptions. So I can go over there and say, to point something out and say, maybe think about this step more. I'm not going to go over and say, you're absolutely wrong or this is the way to do it, because I don't want them to mimic me. I want them to come up with the thinking part of it very genuinely.
Shanna Busch is our guest. She is the West Virginia Council of Teachers Mathematics Middle School Math Teacher of the Year. Is this the first award like this you've ever won?
Yes, I think so.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an extreme honor.
Yeah. So here's the thing. As I'm listening to you talk, it sounds to me like you spend a lot of time thinking about how to teach and how to reach. And that appeals to me because I'm a coach. And I think I've been coaching for 20-something years, from youth leagues all the way on up now to high school. And I always like to approach things out of the box, because you think about the teachers you had and the coaches that you had and the ones that were able to reach you, and you have to examine and say why, right? So why were they able to reach me? What did they do that was different? And that's one of the things, like it sounds like you do, is you spend a lot of time thinking, as I do, what's a better way to teach this so I can reach these kids to show them the right way to do this.
Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely. I think about the math teachers that I had, the ones that stick out to me, and they had very high expectations. So they didn't lower the standard. They set the bar very high, but they were also available to help. They were there to support, and that's sort of what I've taken into my philosophy as a teacher is to hold students accountable, to push them further, to challenge them, but also not push them out on a limb. They're not out there on a branch by themselves. I'm standing right there beside them if they need the help.
How much time do you spend thinking about a lesson plan that you're about to do, especially if it's kind of a newer one?
I don't even want to think about the amount of time that I think about teaching outside of teaching.
Probably fairly constant.
A lot. Yeah, it's absolutely constant. I think teaching, for me personally is 7 days a week. On the weekend, I'm grading, I'm preparing for my week, I'm thinking about different resources that I'm going to use. And even over the summer, everyone's like, oh, teachers, you have summers off. But I do a lot of planning over the summer to kind of think about, how did the year go? What do I want to use again? What do I sort of want to tweak a little bit? What do I want to bring in that's completely brand new that I think might have a better effect on students?
Do you experiment on your own kids first with some of this stuff?
They would probably say that I do. I definitely have some good, my own personal children are great at school, and I think that's just the benefit of having a teacher as a mom.
In the classroom, are they allowed to use calculators?
Yes. In 7th grade, we do. That varies depending on what grade you're in, but yeah, in 7th grade, we do.
Do you find that the team concept with the whiteboards make homework more fun or more challenging or more receptive, I guess is a better word?
Well, I actually have a different philosophy on homework. I don't like homework, and I don't give homework necessarily.
Yay.
Because there's a lot of reasons for that. One, our students are really busy outside of school. So they're involved in sports activities, helping with their family. And when you all put in your time of your 9 to 5 and you go home, then that's your free time. That's your personal time. And that's sort of what I believe that students should have too. They should have a break. But they also have work that they have to get done. So they may have to do something outside of our math classroom if it takes them longer, or if that's, if they've chosen not to be on task that particular day, then they may have things to do outside. but a lot of my students need a lot of support. And when they go home, sometimes, you know, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever they're at home with hasn't done that type of math in quite a number of years. And maybe they've learned it differently than how their own student is learning it. So, you know, I don't want any conflict or fights or, you know, over dinner over math, because, you know, we've probably had some of those in our own personal lives growing up. So I like to be there with my students when they're working on their assignments so that I can offer that support.
Plus, with technology, who's to say the homework that they're doing is making them think anyway?
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
You could just go online and find stuff.
Yes, I mean, and now with a lot of AI tools, you know, and apps and websites out there that allows students to, you know, type in a problem or take a photo of a problem, they're seeing all of the steps to solve that and getting the answer. You know, you're never going to be able to avoid that, obviously.
Is there a point, though, where this sounds like a wonderful learning experience, but ultimately you got to sit down and take the standardized test. So is there a point where you train them on the skills of taking a standardized test? Because test taking skills is a skill unto itself.
Absolutely. So I try to throw that in throughout the entire year. So it's not like we work and we work and we do this all year, and then all of a sudden for these 2 weeks, I'm going to teach you completely differently. So throughout the year, we talk about the standardized tests that they take, and I implement questions that come directly from the test. So they're used to seeing the way that the standards are presented in our end of the year test, how the questions are worded, what it looks like, the different types of questions that they might be asked, like a select all or a multiple choice or that, so that they understand what the test is going to look like. We talk about the tools that are available to them within the test itself. We use, we've just actually switched from our handheld calculators that we use to just the online Desmos calculator, because that's the calculator that they use in the test itself. So I want them to be completely comfortable when they take that.
Shanna, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Congratulations once again on the award. I can see why you were selected.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate that.
Your passion and enthusiasm is apparent.
Thank you.
Good for you.
Thank
Good for
you.
your students.
Thank you.
Right. Shanna Busch, our guest here.